Hello friends, welcome to educators.com. I am Preeti Rathi. In last video we have seen pointers. Now in this video we'll relate pointer with the function parameter. That is, function parameter will be passed by value as well as by reference. And one more concept, that is recursion in function. Now the topics which we are going to cover are function parameter, that is call by value and call by reference. We will check the example to swap two numbers, then what is recursion, and then we'll see example to find factorial using recursion. Now whenever we pass the parameter, by default it is always by value, but we can make it by reference, which is nothing but we can pass address of a variable and it can be held into a pointer. So now when we pass by value, so changes made in the caller function will not be reflected to the called function, whereas when we pass or call by reference, that time the changes will be reflected. If we differentiate these two, then in call by value, copy of argument is passed to the function. Changes in function does not affect the original variables. This should be used when function does not need to modify the argument and we want to avoid accidental changes. Then we have call by reference. It passes the original argument as we are using address of that variable. So changes in function affect the original variables. It should be used with trusted functions only. Now a function can return only one value, but if sometime we want that multiple variables should be affected by the function, then we can use call by reference. Now one of the example of this is swapping two numbers. We want to swap the numbers and the value should be reflected in the caller function. Here main is a caller function, whereas swap is a function which will perform swapping task. Now here in this case we are declaring a and b as 3 and 2. Then we are displaying the values before swapping. Then when we call this swap function, control will jump to this function. Now here ampersand a will be saved in x. So x is a pointer which is holding address of a, whereas y is a pointer which is holding address of b. So x and y are actually pointing to the a and b of main. Then we have taken a third variable as a temp. Then value at x is stored in temp. Then value of y is given to value at x. Then we have the value which was saved in temp, that was value of x, we are storing back to y. So this way we can perform swapping, and as actually we are modifying the a and b only through their pointers which are pointing to a and b, so the changes will be reflected in the main method also. But if we pass it directly by value, so whatever changes we'll do in a swap function, that will not be reflected in the main method. That will check out practically also. Now the next concept is recursion. In C, it is possible for a function to call itself. Now a function is called as a recursive if a statement within the body of a function calls the same function. There will be some exit condition to stop this, but a function can call itself. One of the example is a factorial, calculation of a factorial of a number. Now this is the example for factorial. Now in this case we are just asking user to enter a number, reading that in a, then we are calling a function called as rec a. As soon as we call the function, control will jump here. If suppose user has entered 3, so it will come to this level. Then we are using f to hold the factorial value. Then we are checking if x is 1, then we are returning from this place itself with 1 value. Else we are saying f equal to x into rec of x minus 1, means we are calling the same function again by decrementing the value of x. So call will again go back to the start of this function and will assign 2 to x. Then again this statement will be executed. Again it will be deducted by 1, that is x will become 1. The same function is called. This time x equal to 1 is true, so it will return 1. So we will get x into x minus 1 into 1. So we'll have 3 into 2 into 1, and that value will be stored in f, which will be returned from the function. Now same we can see in this pictorial view also, that if we have, as soon as we have called rec of x minus 1, it will call this function again by decrementing x. It will execute this. As soon as we are calling return, as soon as we are reaching to this place, it will again call this function by decrementing x. Once x becomes 1, it will return this value at this place. Then this return statement will be executed. This will return the value at this place. Then this return will be executed and it will return the value to main. This way we can calculate factorial. So now we'll check out both the concept practically. Now in this example, again we are including stdio.h and conio.h header file. Main is the entry point of our application. Now here we'll declare two variables, say integer I equal to 10 and j equal to 20. Now we want to swap the value of I and j. So first I'll print the value before swapping, that is before swapping I equal to %d and j equal to %d. Now we will call a function called as swap, which we are going to declare now, where initially I'll directly pass the value by value. Then we'll see that value will not reflect the changes made in swap function. Then we'll modify it using pointers. So now we'll display the value after calling swap. I equal to %d and j equal to %d. Now we'll write swap function. Now right now we don't want to return anything from swap function, so we'll declare it as a void. Now I'll take two variables, integer a and b. So when we call swap with I and j, I will go to a and j will go to b. Now here we will take a temporary variable, then we'll store value of a into temp variable, then we'll make a to hold y's value, and then y can hold the value which is stored in temp. So this way we are swapping the value, that is temp is holding a's value, then y's value is stored in, it's not y, it is b, so I'll make it b. B's value is stored in a, and then b will hold the value which is in temp, that is nothing but the a's value. So if I'll execute this now, so we are expecting values should be swapped, but the output is values are not swapped. We are getting before swapping and after swapping same value. This is because when we are passing I and j are assigned to a and b, but a and b are the different variable which are being swapped. If we display a and b inside this function, we'll get output of swapping. In swap function, if I'll check out the values, that is what is a and what is b, so we'll find that values are swapped here but not reflected to the caller function. So you can see values are swapped here, a has become 20 and b is 10, but still in main it's not reflecting it. because this is pass by value. Only values are passed, so changes made in a call function are not reflected into the caller function. But now that is our requirement, because function can return only one value, but we want to swap both the values and reflect that in the caller function. So in such case we can pass parameter by reference, means we will be passing addresses of the actual parameter. Those addresses will be holding into the pointers. So now A is a pointer which is holding address of I, and B is a pointer which is holding address of J. So if I manipulate this variable using pointer, means star of A I am storing to temp, then I'll make star at A is star at means value at B. Then here also value at B will be the temp. Now you will find that the values will be swapped correctly and it will be reflected in the caller function also. Now before swapping, now here we don't want to display A and B, we will display value of I and J using A and B, that is star of A and star of B. So if I'll execute this now, you can see before swapping it was 1020, in swap function it has become 2010, and in main again after swapping the values are reflected as 2010. So this way we can reflect the value, means changes made to the call function is reflected into the caller function, because A and B is actually pointing to the addresses of I and J only. So it is making modification directly to I and J only. Now the next is recursion. Now as we have discussed, recursion is calling a function to itself. So last time factorial we have discussed using for loop, but now we are going to find the factorial of a given number using recursion. So initially we will take a variable to hold the value entered by the end user, that is say I. Then we'll have a printf statement saying enter value. Now that will read using scanf. In the ampersand of I, that is address of I. Then we will call the function factorial. To hold value of factorial, I'll put one more variable, say fact. Now this fact variable will hold the return value from factorial. Now here to this I'll pass I as a parameter. Then we'll display the value of factorial. Factorial of %d is %d. Now here I'll use I and fact. Now we'll define the function factorial cal or factorial calculation. This function should return a value which will be the calculated value. Then I'll give the name of function, that is factorial calculation. Here we will take one parameter. Now we want to find out the factorial of I. So to hold the value of that factorial, we'll take one f variable. Then we'll check if the value I is equal to 1, then we'll say return 1. As soon as we execute return 1, function will go back to the caller. But in else part, we'll check that f equal to the value of I into, now we are going to call the function again to itself, that is factorial calculation, but this time we are going to pass value which is decremented by 1, because factorial is multiplication of the value till 1, so it is decrementing by 1. If it is a 4 factorial, then 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So this way we will decrement the value and we are going to call the same function again. Now if we are done with this, then finally we are going to return the value of f, where we are storing the actual factorial value. Now in this example, if user enters 3, so with 3 value it will go to this function. At this level it will go to I, then it will check if I is 1, no it's 3, then goes to else part. In else 3 into, again it will call the function by passing value of I as 2. So it will jump to this level. It won't execute return f. Then again it will check out I is 1, no, I is not equal to 1. So it will again have I into I, and again it will execute till it becomes 1. As soon as it becomes 1, it will return with the 1. And finally the value is calculated in f and that will be returned. Now if I'll execute this and if I'll enter 3 as a value, so we'll get factorial as 6. 3 into 2 into 1. Now if I'll execute it again and I'll give 4 as a value, so we'll get output as a 24, that is 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So this way we can calculate factorial using recursion. So we have seen recursion is calling a function to itself, whereas pass by value and pass by reference is a concept where we can pass the value to the parameter using pointer. So value modified in the caller function will be reflected to the called function also. Now in next video we'll discuss about arrays. Thank you.